Way back in the 9th century, two of the world's most fearsome powers were on a collision course. You had one, a master of the sea, and the other, a master of the land. This is the incredible story of their first and incredibly brutal encounter, the Viking raid on Seville. It's a story that really boils down to this. One city burned, and one empire struck back. And honestly, it was a flashpoint in history that would end up changing both sides forever.
So what really happens when the Vikings, who seemed totally unstoppable after raiding Francia, come face to face with the full might of the Islamic Empire in al-Andalus? Well, let's get into it.
To really understand this clash, we first got to look at the two main players on the world stage back in the year 844. On one side, the Norsemen, feared across all of Europe, and on the other, the incredibly powerful Emirate of Córdoba. This was a true collision of worlds.
Okay, so on one hand, you've got the Northmen. These guys were battle-hardened Vikings, absolute masters of the sea, and their longships had already carved these fiery paths all across northern Europe. They were always looking for new, richer lands to plunder. But on the other side, the Emirate of Córdoba and al-Andalus. This was a wealthy, super sophisticated state known for its powerful cavalry and really well-organized armies. The thing is, its focus was almost entirely on land-based threats. It was powerful, for sure, but vulnerable in a way it hadn't even realized yet.
And that one little vulnerability was about to be brutally exposed. The Northmen, feeling pretty good after their victories up north, turned their ships south, ready to unleash absolute fury.
The speed of this invasion was just staggering. In August of 844, a massive Viking fleet just shows up off the coast of Lisbon. By late September, they'd already sailed up the Guadalquivir River and set up a base. And then, on October 1st, the assault on Seville began. That city would burn for an entire week. You see, the Vikings used the Guadalquivir River like their own personal highway. Their longships had a shallow draft, which meant they could just bypass all the coastal defenses and strike nearly 100 kilometers inland, right into the heart of the emirate. They set up their base on Isla Menor, which put them in the perfect spot to attack their unsuspecting prize, Seville. And the city? It was completely unprepared, a sitting duck. Historical accounts tell us Seville didn't even have proper walls at the time. So when those Viking war cries started echoing through the streets, the local defenders were a mess. The governor had already taken off. It was just total chaos as the Northmen stormed the city.
The accounts that we have from that time are, well, they're chilling. For 7 straight days, the Vikings just plundered the city. One chronicle says they spared neither man nor beast, killing the men and taking women and children captive, probably to be sold in the slave markets. They looted homes, burned buildings, and even tried to set fire to the great mosque.
But here's the thing. The Emirate of Córdoba was not like the fractured little kingdoms of the north. When news of the sacking reached the capital, the response was swift and it was furious. The empire was about to strike back hard.
Emir Abd al-Rahman II was absolutely enraged. He didn't offer them money, he didn't try to make a deal for peace. Nope. Instead, he sent out letters to every corner of his realm, ordering his governors to get their forces together and march on Seville. This wasn't just a raid anymore. This was about to be a war. So the full organized military power of the state was brought down on them. The emir sent a large, professional army under the command of his top general, Isa ibn Shuhaid. And this wasn't some local militia, This was an elite force of cavalry and seasoned soldiers, a unified response the Vikings had probably never seen before.
And they didn't just meet the Vikings in some head-on battle. Oh no, they used strategy. They were clever. One of the commanders, Muhammad ibn Rustam, set up this brilliant ambush. He sent a small force to kind of poke at the Vikings, luring the overconfident Northmen out of the city and into a chase, straight towards a village called Tablada, where the main Andalusi army was just waiting for them.
And what happened next at Tablada?
It was a slaughter.
The tide of the invasion turned in a single, incredibly bloody battle that would become a hard lesson for the Vikings.
See, the Emirates' forces brought out a terrifying secret weapon. Using catapults, they launched something called Greek fire. It's this incendiary liquid that could actually burn on water. Can you imagine being a Viking trapped on the river in your wooden longship and seeing that coming at you? It must have seemed like hell itself had opened up. The river literally became a death trap. The result for the raiders was catastrophic. Some sources claim as many as 1,000 Vikings were killed. 30 of their precious longships were captured and burned to the waterline. And 400 of them were taken prisoner. Just like that,
The great Viking raid had ended in total disaster.
But the Emirates' response didn't just end on the battlefield, not even close. They sent a brutal message. The captured Vikings were hanged from the palm trees right there in Seville. The heads of their leader and 200 of his warriors were sent to allies in North Africa as a demonstration of power. The message was crystal clear. This is what happens when you attack al-Andalus.
But the story doesn't end there. That raid in 844, even though it was a military victory for the Emirate, it was also a massive wake-up call, and it left a lasting legacy that would reshape the balance of power in the entire Mediterranean.
al-Rahman II completely seized the moment. He ordered the construction of the first true navy of al-Andalus. He built a massive shipyard in Seville, the very city that had just been sacked. He fortified the coastline with new watchtowers and, most importantly, he built strong new walls around Seville. He turned a crisis into a catalyst for innovation.
So in a wild twist of fate, the Viking attack inadvertently forced this land-based emirate to look to the sea, and this sparked the creation of a naval superpower. For the next 100 years, the navy of al-Andalus would dominate the western Mediterranean, securing trade routes, projecting power, and preventing another big Viking attack for over a century. It fundamentally changed the geopolitical map.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating thought to end on. This one. Violent encounter between the Vikings and the Caliphate had these enormous consequences. It really makes you wonder, right? How might the history of the Mediterranean, and maybe all of Europe, have been different if the Emirate hadn't crushed this raid and forged itself into a master of the seas?